some fun things to do. First, we're just going to talk about how to pick cheeses for our cheese board. So I have a couple things to just throw out there. There are different ways to choose what you want to have for cheese. Hopefully some of you have cheese in front of you. If not, maybe you'll go out and buy it after today and make your own beautiful cheese board. So 3 to 5 types of cheese is a good amount of cheese, so it's not overwhelming. But remember, even one cheese can still be a cheese platter. Another rule of thumb is to use an odd number of cheeses on your board, which is what we have today. Another little thing to go by is kind of little rhymes, something old, something new, something stinky, something blue. You can pick a theme, or you can go with a variety package of like different textures, different milks, different flavors, hard versus soft, smooth versus crumbly cheese. So I think what we picked out today is one familiar flavor, one exciting new flavor with different milk, an aged cheese, a soft cheese, and maybe a blue or something with a different milk, or a mixed milk cheese. So the first start out, your cheese selection is key, but don't be intimidated by it. If you just want to do all goat cheeses, that's fine. You know, if you, I've chosen to do like all local things. To highlight Jasper Hill and some of our other local producers. So that's sort of my theme, is like local cheese boards today. Brian, what did you go with?
So first, hey guys, my name is Brian, here at the co-op for about 3 years. Just super into cheese, really like cheese, really love cheese. So Jeannette pretty much said everything perfectly. I do have one cheese off the screen right now, but I'll bring that one screen a little later. So I went ahead and followed through with that same thing, 3 to 5 different cheeses, especially given that I got a larger size cheese board. Something I did want to let everyone know that I always like to encourage, the size of your cheese boards don't necessarily matter. If you have a smaller board, just realize that you can do a little less cheeses, something like 1 to 3. So keep the size of your board in mind when picking out your cheeses and the amount you want too. So that being said, I went for a little more of kind of a crazy pick from everywhere. I went with a few imports, a few of my personal local favorites, really just trying to emphasize what I like to think of the springtime theme. I really like dealing with fresh seasonal flavors. I love having all of that stuff available to me at the co-op too. And so I definitely went with a little more of a range of imports, some local, definitely did some absolutely delicious cheddars. Other than that, Jeannette, you pretty much said everything perfectly.
All right, so I have my Harbison is the soft cheese. These are all from Jasper Hill Cellars, which is started as a farm in Greensboro, Vermont in 2000. Andy and Mateo Keller, which we have a little picture of here, are the brothers who bought cows and started the farm in Greensboro, Vermont. And they started making cheese. And then in 2011, they created vaults underground in northern Rocky, Vermont, which now they age their own cheese and other people's cheese as well. So I have they're a farm, a cheesemaker, and an offenor as well. At the soft Harbison, I have a hard Alpha Tolman that they make, which is a more Alpine Gruyere type style cheese, their own Alpine style. I shouldn't say it's Gruyere because it's not. I have a familiar flavored cheddar, but this is Cabot cloth bound cheddar. It was aged in cloth, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I have the Bailey Hazen blue, which is made by Jasper Hill themselves. Cabot makes this cheddar, but Jasper Hill ages it. And then I have a different mixed milk cheese made by Blue Ledge Farm. So this is a goat milk cheese made by Hannah and Greg at Blue Ledge Farm in Leicester, Vermont. And tell us what you have, Brian.
So I'm going to start with my imports. So doing one of the first imports I have is going to be so I've got a Tarentaise for my Alpine. And so that's going to be just a very typical French style Alpine. The reason I like that one is because it's strong nutty flavors, brown butter aftertones. I just think it's absolutely perfect for what most Alpine cheeses should be.
But that one is made in, this one's made in Vermont.
Yes, I should preface that it is made in Vermont with French styling.
Springbrook Farm, yeah.
Correct. So my cheddar, I've got a Shelburne 2-year aged. That is just a super classic Vermont style cheddar. I think that one is, yep, right here, the Shelburne Farms. I've got a little Hosmer, which is going to be right here. I'll show that one. That one's going to be from also Jasper Hill. The reason I like this one the most, so it's considered a New World breed. I actually like this one at room temp. I always encourage to be eaten at room temp to get that extra gooey factor out of it. I have a Midi Blue, which is my blue cheese on the side. I'll bring that one in view a little bit later. So that is another import. That's going to be a Spanish style blue cheese that's going to have a very similar profile to Roquefort, whereas Roquefort is named.
Caves in France.
Yep. So it is strictly made in Spain, imported, and it's actually made in Manchego County too, which is really cool. And the last cheese I have is going to be a baby Boucheron, and that is going to count as my washed rind. And that is kind of my new cheese. The outside's nice and gooey. The inside's got a nice, fresh, lemony chev. Something new, something different for me to try, and hopefully you guys feel inspired to try it too.
And that's also a different milk. So that's made with goat milk, and
Yep.
Brian's Midi Blue is made with sheep milk. So
Correct.
he has a couple different milk flavors, milk animals going on there at the same time.
Yep.
All right, so how to pick cheese. So again, you should pick out what you like, or you can pick out something new and try something. But if you're serving it, to people that you never know what people are gonna like. So definitely bring some of what you like. How much to get cheese amounts. These are some general guidelines. If you're serving the board as an appetizer, and you're gonna have dinner afterwards, you just want really like an ounce per person for all the cheese, which is not, doesn't sound like very much. We can definitely eat that much at once. If you're using it more as a dinner, you're just gonna have a charcuterie board, a cheese board for dinner, or a cheese plate meal. It's more like 2 ounces or a 1/4 pound of cheese per person. So those are some basic guidelines to start with. And then the accompaniments that you pick out, it's good to pick one to go with each cheese by itself, but it's nice to have them that they can accompany a couple of the different things that you have on your board. Again, you want some variety in the texture and the taste, like the sweet and savory, and like crunchy, soft. So my pairing choices, I went with local. So I have the Cheshire Garden pairings. I did the damson plum jam that Patty and Ralph make on their farm in Winchester. They grow the fruit and garlic, and they grow herbs. And they've been making jam and mustards there in small batches with their own fruit. I have the raspberry preserves to go with the harbison. Let's see, the damson plum to go with the Bailey Hazen, but it's also nice with the Lake's Edge. I have dilly mustard that Cheshire Garden makes as well. It's got garlic and turmeric in, so that's nice with the Cabot cloth bound. And also the salami. So I have salami from Walpole Valley Farm, which is in Walpole, New Hampshire. Chris and Caitlin started raising chickens. They also sell eggs here at the co-op and meat, and they sell their pork is processed into salami. The Italian salami we have at the cheese counter. And I have dilly beans, because it's nice to have something savory to cut the different texture of the cheese, a little acidity. So dilly beans is also like a traditional English ploughman's board. So the Cabot cloth bun is more like a traditional English cheddar, and the on a ploughman's board you'd have cheese, pickles, and a hunk of bread. Sometimes you might see that on a restaurant menu. Board. So we're going to go with dilly beans and the Cabot cloth bound. I have let's see what else. Oh, the dilly mustard also goes really nicely with the Alpha Tolman. I have some dried apricots that go nicely with Alpha Tolman that we're going to throw in later. I have the Ernesto crackers that we sell here at the cheese counter. They're very nice crunch, just, they have sea salt, they're just a little bit, but they're really nice with cheese. They're not too salty. Onesto is also made, it means honest in Italian. So these are gluten-free, but you wouldn't know that. They're made in Bristol, Vermont. They're a nice cheese accompaniment. So crackers, which we'll put on our board later. And I have a few other surprises and garnishes to go when we get to that point. All right, so Brian, I'll tell you what he's got for pairings over here.
So besides the, the strewn about fresh fruits and veggies, I've got some fresh grapes off to the side, some fresh figs. I've got some fresh herbs, thyme, rosemary, things like that. Some of the main things I'd want to emphasize discussing some of the local companies. I do have two of the Blake Hill jams right here. I've got the orange and the 10-year single malt jam, which pairs very well with aged cheddars and hard cheeses. And then I've got a raspberry mostarda, which is actually specifically meant to be paired with a washed rind. Today, that'll be getting paired with a little Hosmer, or the Bloomy rind, I apologize. With that, I've also got the Vermont salumi. We carry those at the cheese department. I absolutely love them. This is the juniper flavor. I specifically went with the juniper flavor to continue with that spring style. Even though juniper is typically a little bit of a winter flavor, I do like to bring it into the early spring. Some other things that I have are going to be some cornichons that we also do sell, aka baby sour gherkins, some of my favorites. And then I do have a little bit of a treat later, which is going to be showing everyone how to properly eat honeycombs. So that'll be a really fun one. I'm excited to get into that with you guys. The other thing for crackers that I'll be using, we also sell these at the store, but they're just typical car table wafer crackers. Nothing crazy, nothing simple. When I'm eating cheeses, I like to let the cheese and the jams kind of take centerpiece.
And
so
the other thing about crackers is that you definitely want things that don't have a lot of flavors going on. They're, to me and Brian, I think they're more like vehicles for cheese.
Exactly.
So you definitely don't want too salty, because that will just be very unpleasant. A lot of the cheese and the salami tends to be saltier, which is why we sort of go with the sweet thing. But so the water crackers are very plain. They have very little bit of salt. They don't have salt crystals on top. These Onesto crackers they say sea salt, but they're very, very light on the salt. So so they're a nice thing to put cheese on. The Vermont salumi is also a local product made in Barry, Vermont, by Pete Coleman, who grew up on an organic farm in Vermont. He spent summers with his grandparents in Italy and decided he loved prosciutto and wanted to know how to make it. So he apprenticed over there, and he came back to Vermont in Barry and started his own salumi company. He also makes some sausages and things that we sell in the meat department.
Also very delicious.
Yes, a good theme going on here. All right, so how to set up our work area. So we're gonna prepare the cheeses before we put them on the board. So you need a different cutting board maybe than what you're using to serve your cheese on. So we have a cutting board, maybe a chef's knife, maybe a smaller paring knife, or another sharp knife for your salami, or a soft cheese knife, which is what this sort of thing is, that helps to keep the rind and the soft cheese together with the cheese instead of a big knife. Then you need some kind of a cutting board to do that on, and you should think about your serving tray. So Brian has the fun stuff. I have the basic cutting board over here. You can use a cutting board. Mine's a little bit bigger than I need, so it's gonna have a little bit of a border. I wanted to bring a smaller one, but then I thought everything would be falling off. So you can also use a dinner plate if you want to have a round thing, put something in the center and spread it out. Brian has some fun boards that have things cut out for the different things that we're using. Do you want to say any more about those?
Yeah, so something that I really enjoy about charcuterie boards in general is that they don't necessarily need to be wood. They can be marble, they can be steel, they can be glass. Bear in mind that the bigger the board, the more money you'll need to fill it. And so traditionally, keep in mind that you want to keep to the size that you're going to be feeding. The other really cool thing about it is you can raid your kitchen for candy dishes, ramekins, things like that, and anything like that will kind of fit in your charcuterie board. They're meant to be rustic, so if they mismatch, almost the better.
Yep.
Other than that, I just be creative, have fun. You can see here, I will bring it earlier, but yeah, so my board here has a little bit of these holes made in for some ramekins to fit in nice and easy. And you'll actually see before we started, I have a little marble square cut out in mine. I put that in the fridge or the freezer to stay cold. So the cheeses or anything that needs to stay cold and refrigerated will actually hold its temp a little bit while it sits out.
Right, so you got your cheese, you got your utensils to cut your cheese, you have something to put your cheese platter, your cheese board on, and now we need to figure out how you're going to envision your platter. So Brian and I have fun with this part. You can draw a map, which is what I did, which is what Brian did.
Yep.
Or you can just play around as you do it. But remember, some of the cheeses might be a little gooey. So when you put them down, it might be to either have a little map in your head or just draw a little thing about where you're going to put them. So it's good to think about balance and maybe not symmetry. Unless you have a round plate, you're obviously going to have something nice in the middle, probably, and have little like wedge shaped things. Mine's going to be a little off balance. It's not going to, these are, I just threw them out here. We're obviously going to cut those, but it's not going to be like, everything's not going to be lined up perfectly, because I don't feel great about that. Plus I also have 5 cheeses on this rectangle, so that's not going to work out if I try to place it in a perfect symmetrical thing. So we want our cheeses to be cold before we, they're easier to cut, except the Bailey Hazen is better to warm this glue up. If you should take your cheeses out like 30 to 60 minutes before you're gonna serve them, then it gives the cheese time to temper, to come up to room temperature for best flavor. You also want to clean your knife in between while we're cutting cheeses, or you can have 5 different knives if you want, just so that you're not transferring the flavors. It's not bad because it's all cheese, but you don't want to contaminate the other cheeses and transfer those flavors. The other thing about how to cut, or what we're going to do, is that the design pops when everything is the same size. So we're striving to have everything be a 1 bite size. We're going to have utensils, or people can pick things up with their fingers who are eating your cheese plate. But we want pretty much everything to be in even pieces for 1 bite. We're going to work from the cleanest to the messiest, the firmer ones to the soft ones. I'm going to put my harbison out here, maybe a little off center. We're going to cut that later because this is a very soft cheese. Has spruce bark rind around the outside, but it's very soft. So we're going to leave that one to cut till later. My Alpha Tolman is my hard cheese. I guess I'm start cutting. I'm going to cut those into some. So the cheese might tell you what shape it wants to be cut in a little bit. The Alpha Tolman wedges, it has a little bit of a rind. I'm going to cut the rind off, and I'm going to, so this would be too big to make a triangle here. But it usually has a nice wedge, so it has a nice, so you should taste the rind. But you don't want someone to get a whole piece of rind when they have this 1 bite of cheese. So we're gonna just slice real close to the edge. The rind is definitely edible. It's a little more funky. It's a washed rind. Alpha Tolman is actually named after, Alpha Tolman was a philanthropic dairy farmer. And he built the Greensboro Library in Greensboro, Vermont, which is where Jasper Hill is. And his grandfather was one of the town's original settlers. So Jasper Hill uses a lot of local names and places for their cheese names. Harbison is named after Anne Harbison, who they call the grandmother of Greensboro. So I'm going to cut across the middle and then make some small triangles. Not too thick, so you can pretty much 1 bite of cheese. And I'm gonna let Brian tell you about his bourbon while I finish cutting this.
So my cheddar, or my hard cheese, is going to be a typical cheddar. Yep. This is going to be the Shelburne Farms 2-year age. So honestly, the main thing that I just really like about the Shelburne Farms 2-year cheddar is that it's a very classic Vermont style cheddar. Growing up in New England, being in New England my whole life, I've gotten very acclimated to the sharp acidity and then kind of having that sweet and salty finish that comes very standard in New England style cheddars. You'll always have a little bit of variation on regards to saltiness level and things like that, but I just find that the Shelburne Farms does an outstanding job finding that nice middle balance.
And so Shelburne Farms has their own cows. They're brown Swiss. They make their own cheese at Shelburne Farms. It's also an educational center. There's a hotel area there, but it's in a big beautiful inn. It's on the edge of Lake Champlain. So they raise their own cows and they milk those cows. It's a working farm, and they make the cheese right there. So it has some of that terroir that we talked about in the last class that we did, with a sense of place. Jasper Hills also has a sense of place with their farm and their animals. And, that cheddar is made with raw milk. It's going to be a little different than Grafton's raw milk cheddar, or Cabot's cheddar is pasteurized. So a little bit different flavor. And then that like lake air or something.
Exactly.
And the grass, it's again in northern Vermont. They don't have a huge growing season, but they make it work. Yeah.
So honestly, other than that, the other really reason that I love Shelburne Farms and I love these other things like this, pretty much like most of the farms in this area, they're super humane. They allow people to come onto the farm. You can see the cows, you can interact with the cows, you can see that they're happy. And in my eyes, I really, really want to make sure that the animals are being treated well in order to continue getting cheeses and these delicious products from them. Yeah, honestly, the other really cool thing about Shelburne Farms, they are located right at the end of that forest. I think that's a national historical forest. So I believe it's protected, beautiful landscape. Honestly, the whole area is just beautiful. I could definitely be happy living up there. As soon as Jeanette's done cutting this, obviously no rush, I'll get started cutting on mine. What I'm going to do is just very simply be cutting it in half and then just maybe 1/4 inch to not even 1/2 inch slices. So just really basic rectangles, nothing crazy. In my head, perfect for just popping in your mouth, almost just like snacking cheddar.
So I'm going to just set these aside, and when we're ready to arrange these, we will do that. But I made these little just triangular pieces. This one's a little bit of what do you call it? Sorry, I can't remember the shape.
Trapezoid.
Trapezoid, there you go.
Rhombus.
So we'll put those out after. You can go ahead and cut your Shelburne. Like the Alpha Tolman is usually it's like a 20-pound wheel, so it's either going to be cut in half and then in triangles, but there's going to be a wedge-like shape. So it's just a nice it lends itself to the triangle thing. And again, you can be as fancy as you want, like lay them all out perfectly, or I'll show you what I'm going to do when we get everything cut up here. The other thing about cutting the edge off the rind off the Alpha Tolman, if you get that, or when Brian gets his Tarantes, there's a similar thing too. So it has a rind on it. It's very probably not, but you want to cut as close to that where the color changes. The rind on Alpha Tolman is washed, so it was a little orange and sticky. So this was the orange rind as opposed to the inside, the cheese paste part. The paste inside, it's called a cheese, but it gets a little darker there at the edge. So that's the part you want to cut off. Again, you can eat this, but you can also I read something on one of Jasper Hill's things, you can broil these and eat them like crispy things, not for very long, they get crispy. The rinds, you're up for that, you can try it. I didn't get to it. I know it sounds good, doesn't it?
So as you can see here, I just very simply did very, very thin squares, little rectangles even. Nothing special. Honestly, you'll probably even see these at your grocery store platters. I like these cuts just because they're really, really simple to handle. They're really, really easy to eat, and everyone kind of recognizes them. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm actually going to move these to the side. I'll put them on when I'm ready for it. I will keep a 1/2 block right there. I always like leaving a little bit extra on the platter, or even keeping a little bit on a side dish and keeping it in the fridge to stay cold so you can refill throughout the day.
The other reason we're going to cut the cheeses in different shapes is because that way whoever's eating your cheese, if you're not there to tell them about it every minute, that they're going to recognize that they're different cheeses. So it gives you a visual for a visual, and you don't have to explain that as you're serving, or people are helping themselves. All right, so I'm going to move on to my cheddar cloth bound, which is so this is a traditional way to make cheddar, that it's aged in a rind with cloth, as the English originally did. And I'm going to use this fun knife that sometimes comes in the little cheese sets. First, I'm going to cut off the rind again. As you can do a couple fun things with this, actually. You can cut really close to the edge. So this rind is edible. The cheese puff isn't on it anymore. But it's definitely going to be a little drier out there. Maybe a little bit of saltiness. Not perfect at this. You can cut this like very slightly into the edge and make a little L shape. Oh, there, I broke it. You can make a little rind and put that on your cheese board to coat out. We're going to make these into little nuggets, curd nuggets. It broke it, didn't work. All right, well, we'll dispense with that today. Anyway, so the cloth bound cheddar, I'm not sure you can see this, but the texture is a little different. It's not smooth like the Shelburne Farms one that Brian was just looking at. There's also, obviously, there's curds that are pressed together to make the cheese, but it's a little more obvious the way it ages in the cloth bound. So it just lends itself to this sort of, you put a point, it doesn't have to be this cute knife, but you can just use a point of a sharp knife and just put it in, and the curds will tend to break apart a little bit more on you. So don't get too small because you won't be able to pick them up, but you want little curd nuggets. We're going to make the little curd nuggets with our cloth bound here. Again, they're like bite size. They're easy to pick up. Pop them in your mouth, with a little side or a piece of fruit or whatever you got going on here. Share a little fun add-ons when we get there. All right, you want to move on and I'll just keep making some curd nuggets here?
Yeah, so I started with my cheddar. I'm now going to move on to my second kind of hard cheese, which is going to be my Alpine, which is the Tarentaise. So where Jeannette was discussing her rind, I did preemptively cut off my rind, but hopefully you can see if I show it up. You'll be able to see that there's some slight discoloration onto the sides and the back here from where you can see I went to as close as I could to that rind like Jeannette was talking about. So the main reason for that being, as Jeannette just said, I personally, I've never taken the rinds and fried them up or anything. I will take rinds of like Parmesan cheese and some other kinds of cheeses and actually add them to milk and dairy when you're making mac and cheese, and it makes a really extra pop of cheesy deliciousness. So if you're bored and want to try that, I suggest it. So I'll be cutting the cheese a little differently than Jeannette did with her Alpine, but it is going to be the similar concept and the idea that we're going to be going thin slices, and I'm actually going to shingle them. So I'm going to cut this right in half. And then we'll do the same thing, my half kind of to the side, save that for later in case anyone gets hungry. And then thin slices, just simply shingle them laid on top of each other on the cutting board afterwards.
Oh, so they're going to be rectangles instead of triangles.
Yes, they're going to be the rectangles this time, just because I don't want to waste any cheese cutting triangles.
Okay.
And actually, this is a perfect example, though I can show the rind on that back in comparison to the
Yep.
center. So you can see that I try to go as far as I can to that rind.
So if you're not familiar with it, the natural rind, again, it's here on the cloth bound cheddar too. So the natural rind means that it's aged, the cheese is aged in a cave or aging space where it dries naturally. It might be treated like the Alpha Tolman is washed. It gets that orangey rind. The Cabot cloth bound has cloth on the outside of it, but it's still going to dry out. The Tarentaise has a very nice hard rind, and you can see the little imprint of the molds that it was made in when you buy the rind, the cheese with the rind on it. So it's drier and hard to chew at that, and you don't get the whole flavor profile. That's why you also want to have like the inside, the paste, if you're going to have the rind with it, the paste attached to the rind, because it's not really your best flavor by itself. So that's what those are natural rind cheeses. Other cheeses are aged in wax or in a plastic quite that type thing situation.
Can I ask a question from the chat?
Of course.
Awesome. So Michael is asking, do you ever leave the cheese whole and allow your guests to cut the cheese themselves?
So I prefer to, Brian has an idea too. I prefer to, some people aren't sure what to do with it, and then you'll get somebody, or they might like, they'll cut the thing of brie or the soft bacon, and you'll get like, all they'll just take is the middle part, and then somebody comes along and all there is like the outside of the brie rind, and it's like, ooh, I don't want that part, dude. Like, I want some of all of it. So it just gives a suggestion, even if you don't cut it all up like I'm doing. It gives the next person a suggestion on how to cut the rest of it with, and again, which one that is. Like if Brian didn't cut these two different or arrange them differently, that could be the same cheese. I mean, you can also, Brian and I talked about this, you can get there's little sign things you can write on little pieces of chalkboard, and there's little signs you can stick on your cheese boards. I tend to like it a little more au naturel and not feel like I'm at the restaurant where I got this cheese plate, but you know, that's an option too. Or Brian talked about just having some of those labels.
Yeah, so
and not for everything.
Yeah, so I even have one or two labels that I occasionally put on my boards, especially if I'm hosting a party with more than 4 or 5 people and a little less intimate.
Right, so you can't talk to them so much.
Exactly.
Right.
And like I said, the other thing I like to do is I'll sometimes only cut up about half my cheese, and what I'll end up doing is taking the rest, tight wrapping it, putting it in the fridge. And so if there's a personal favorite that the party guests prefer, I can always get more cut and get it out. That way it doesn't go bad. It's not sitting out there. And we don't want to waste any cheese.
And we don't want anyone to be hungry if they want more cheese.
Exactly.
We want more cheese, man.
Or
if you came late to the party, we want you to have some cheese.
We don't want you to just have rind. So I actually, I usually do a little bit of a split. So if I have 2 cheeses that are going to be cut very similar, like I did with the Alpine and the cheddar here, what I'll end up doing is I'll lay one shingled. I'll usually leave part of it out so people know that is a very certain kind of cheese, and the other one that is cut, like I'll do for this cheddar, is I'll actually pile it, and I'll just kind of literally just be a pile of cut cheese, which I don't see anything wrong with though.
No, I don't either. I mean, it lends itself to doing that as well. Of course, yeah. All right, so let's just give this guy a little wipe, and move it to some different stuff. These hard ones, because they can all sit out, you know, there's nothing gonna happen to the cheese. It's gonna just taste better if you give it 30 to 60 minutes, you know. We're working on 30 here, and it's got a nice flavor. So I'm gonna leave my Bailey's until last because that's the messiest one. I'm gonna work on my Lake's Edge. So this is made by Greg and Hannah at Blue Edge Farm. Well, this one says Salisbury, Vermont. Some of their labels say Leicester, Vermont. I'm sorry, I'm not the expert on this part. Anyway, they this is named after, there's a line of, it's an ash veined goat cheese, so I'm going to cut it in half. These are the minis. They also sell whole like 1 pound ones, so that's the regular Lake's Edge size. So if you look at this, it has this is just aged like 3 weeks, so there's this line in the middle of ash, and these are named for the stones found along the edge of Lake Champlain, which is near their farm. Greg and Hannah established this farm in 2000. It's a goat farm. It's family owned and operated and run dairy, goat, and cheese making operation. Their top priority when making decisions is about ensuring sustainability. There's also, when I looked, I know them a little bit. When I looked at their website, they're also both artists, and Greg writes some poetry and does some writing. So they have some beautiful, beautiful paintings of fun things like goats and country scenes. So if you want to look at their paintings, which are all for sale on their website, there's links to both of their paintings. They're very different. They're super amazing animal farm pictures, and also just country scenes. So I'm going to cut this in wedges. It lends itself to something like that again. So this is ash ripened. The middle is the paste in the middle is firmer, and this ripens from the outside in. So if you see when I squish it here, it's a little softer here, and it can be even more softer than this too. But then there's ash sprinkled in the middle between 2 layers when they layer the cheese vat, and there's ash around the outside, and there's also white mold probably added in the cheese that, or maybe sprayed on after, that helps, that grows around the ash. So it has a little bit different taste. This is all goat milk. They also make some, the camembert that they make is cow milk. They also have some mixed goat and cow cheeses, but they buy their cow milk from their neighbors. So I'm gonna leave half here on the board. I'm gonna cut the other one. I guess I'm just gonna cut one wedge out of it. No, I guess I'll cut a couple, sorry. Because that's gonna be, but you wanna have, you wanna have a piece of the rind, flavor, texture. Maybe this is what I'll do. I'll put this part of the little wedge on top so people have an idea how to cut that. And I'll cut some little pieces so that it fits right inside there. Right. So that is our different milk cheese. This is goat milk. That looks like the Lake's Edge. And I saw a lot of it, so it's either already your favorite or you might want to try it.
I encourage.
I know a lot of you buy it. All right, Brian, what else we got?
So since I've got a wider variety of milks here, not just necessarily cow milks, I'm actually going to move on to something I've already cut. That's going to be my wash rind. So my wash rind is the baby boucheron.
That's your blue rind too. Oh, that's not wash.
Oh, that is my bloom. You're right. My notes are incorrect. I apologize. So the main thing about this one, edible white rind. So even though it doesn't look edible, it is very similar to the Lake's Edge. It's going to have that outside that's very, very gooey, very, very soft, almost to the point that I don't even want to pick this up to show you guys because it might just be so soft. That being said, that center, same thing, very hard. It's going to have almost a Chev-like quality to it, almost a lemony freshness, a big flavor profile difference between that outside goo and that center hard part.
And that comes in a nice log shape.
Yep.
I'm not exactly sure what boucheron is, but that's a log. That's a very traditional French cheese.
I believe it's actually rolled in like bamboo and stuff too, to hold its shape and everything. So you can't, I don't know if you can see it as well in here, but you'll actually see if you ever purchase it, there's little ridges in that rind that actually show how it's aged. And I think that just goes to show how soft that center is going to be too. So I did already cut this one. I did cut it very, very similar as Jeannette did to her Lake's Edge. I did do wedges. I went a little bit thicker because this is such a tall cheese. I like personally eating it like you would like a spear of like a cucumber or something. You pick up a spear, you kind of get 2 or 3 bites out of it. The reason I like doing that with the boucheron is because of that flavor profile and because of those texture differences.
And we'll definitely need some utensils when we get to.
Yes, we will definitely get some utensils on that one.
Your finger cheese.
Yeah, so I absolutely love that one for that reason, just because of that flavor difference of being the super fresh center and then that nice gooey outside. The rind's got that little bit of white mold, and even though that's edible, that little bit of white tang funk you'll get at the end. This is a nice balance to everything. So I did already cut that one, but like I said, I did this very similar to what Jeannette did here and just did those wedges. I can smell it.
I know it smells really good in here, doesn't it? We're almost there, almost ready. All right, and then my last cheese, I'm gonna move on to the Bailey Hazen. So Bailey Hazen is again made by Jasper Hill. It's their own cheese. It's named after Bailey Hazen Road, which you will see if you drive to Greensboro, Vermont. Bailey Hazen Road was an old military road commissioned by George Washington during the Revolutionary War, and it brought the first settlers to Greensboro, Vermont. So this is the Bailey Hazen. Again, it has a rind. It comes in a drum. It's about 3 pounds, about this high, and this is maybe 1/8 of it. I don't know. So again, this one's better when it warms up to cut a little bit. I'm going to cut the rind off here. It's edible. This is a natural rind again. This is also made with raw milk. It's edible, but it's a little bit strong, and we want to just like have one bite here. So just gonna pass off on that. If you also take a look at your Bailey Hazen or any of your blues, if you have a blue, there should be some little holes in it that you'll see. So obviously the texture, the color is different. It's a blue cheese. It has some blue veins in it. It's mold. It's edible. And the outside edge of your blue cheese, you can see it better when I cut it. So there's little holes, which is where the cheese got pierced. So the blue mold is actually added in the vat. It's just a culture that's added to the cheese vat, into the milk. And then when the cheese is formed into the molds, it's still all white. And then so part of the affinage at the Jasper Hill Caves is that they'll pierce holes in the blue, in the Bailey Hazen blue, and the blue needs the oxygen to grow. So the blue will start to grow in these little channels and tunnels where they're pierced. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna just cut this in half to start with. Yeah, definitely cuts better when it's warmer. So I'm gonna make little triangles because that's kind of what I get out the wheel. Yeah, I'll cut those where Brian tells you what his blue.
Yeah, so I actually might hold off and make my blue last. I think out of all my
okay.
cheeses,
Oh,
my
you still
blue
have
is the
one more to do.
wettest. Yep, so I
Oh,
still
yeah,
have the
you do.
Little
Okay.
Hosmer.
We're gonna
Which
jump to
is
Little Hosmer.
Little Hosmer. So Little Hosmer is another Bloomy Rhymes.
Jasper Hill.
Jasper Hill is just about to say. Big fan of Jasper Hill, big fan of most of the things they do. The cool thing about Little Hosmer is actually named after a pond.
Yes, so the other side of Little Hosmer Pond, there's Big Hosmer, which is where the Craftsbury Outdoor Recreation Rowing and Skiing Center is, where my daughter used to row.
So I always thought that was cool. I think Jeannette already said it several times, but yeah, I always like that they name things after local places and events and things like that. So this is no different. It's named after a little pond or a big pond, depending which one you're talking about. So this is considered a New World brie. It is encouraged to be eaten at room temp again as well. So we've given this well half hour. When we clean that cutting board off, because obviously you don't want any blue cheese residue. So what I'll be doing is cutting this in half. I actually like to display these New World bries and bries that have a little less give to them. Half of them, I like to show them almost at a vertical to show the beautiful insides of these. I'm really excited to cut that one open and show you guys. And then what I'll do is very similar to what Jeannette did with her Blue Lake's Edge. I'll do very small wedges with that other half and I'll display it right in front. And that one actually gets paired directly next to it with a jam, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But cleaning in between cheeses is always going to be your biggest part.
It's like when you make cheese, you spend 75% of your time cleaning it up and not making cheese. I used to do that. More than 3/4 of your time you spend washing and cleaning up. Believe me.
And then I guess before I get started on that, I will also say too that the a little bit more firm than typical bries, like I said, you can pick it up, you can pretty much move it. I do like the mini varieties.
I like it because it's a nice size. Like the Harbison this is the mini Harbison. There's also a 9-ounce Harbison they make, but these are just nice. I like this size. Yeah.
So I'll show you. Yeah. So the center is beautiful. You can see it's got those nice holes in them. It's just super beautiful to look at. And so what I'll usually end up doing is I'll do a little bit of an angle, show that off to your party guests. And then just like Jeannette did with that Lake's Edge, we'll take it and we'll do very, very thin wedges right from the center. Want to show off that nice gooey center.
All right. And then, so my Harbison, I'm going to prep that just before we serve. And I just left I put some of my stuff on the platter because I wanted you to not be looking at this empty board, but we're going to build it in just a minute. The other thing we have to get ready is our salami, which we did a little bit earlier. Still was keep moving along here. So I have the Walpole Valley Italian salami. It comes with a casing. So when you slice off the end, the casing will just peel right off. Your guests aren't going to want to deal with that and eat that. So just peel that off and get rid of it. Brian's Vermont salumi also has this white casing here you can see. So that's not the part you want to eat. So again, we cut some of that already. You can see it's nicely warming up because it's getting a nice little shine to it. So I cut those in little like poker sized chips, sliced thinly. So it's like one bite slice. You can see there's a little bit different color in the varieties here, but one meat on your cheese platter is probably enough. Like we're into featuring the cheeses, so one meat on your cheese platter is enough. If you're into charcuterie, you might want to do more. If you have prosciutto, you can roll it up, but just one, or if you want to use a pate, that's fine too, but I only go with one. So I have little poker-sized chips of salami. Brian's Vermont saloon is ready to go, and because that's gonna be a little chewier. And then we're gonna build our platter. Ray, your stuff's all cut up, ready to go? Okay.
Yeah,
So
we're good to go.
we talked about, so I'm gonna grab out my little map. I talked a little bit, excuse me. I talked a little bit about balance, not symmetry. So I'm gonna place my harvesting down here. I'm gonna put my, what do we got next? My lake's edge is up in this corner, a little towards the corner, more off center. We're gonna place the cheeses first because they're the stars of our show, okay? And we want the weight to be distributed kind of equally. The cheeses are gonna be anchor on our board. And then I'm gonna move into my daily hazen. I'm gonna arrange this a little bit more while Brian's talking about his. So I'm gonna put my triangles down here. So they're maybe like that, so that people can pick them up easily. And then I'll finish those in just a minute. I'm going to put my Alpha Tolman triangles up here. I'm sorry, I got the big things out of the way. You're looking down, that's good. We didn't want you to look vertically across at us, that would horizontally, excuse me. So I'm gonna get these out there. I'm gonna just lay them in like a little fan wedgie shape. If you wanna do really fun things, you can stand them up. You can alternate cute little, you know, however meticulous you wanna be about it or not. You can make little stand-up things. I think I might do that with my crackers actually. I'm gonna leave my little alpha in a fan shape here. So I will work on that in just a minute. Sorry, I'm getting too messy. So I'm gonna make a little fan shape with my little ones here. My cheddar, the cheddar cloth band. I'm going to put my little curds, a little row of curd nuggets here. So I left them on the board because they look like they're all hurt. So a nice little row of curd nuggets. And on this side here, I'm gonna put my salami in a nice little row too, because I like the way that looks together. Sorry, just a second. And then so I'm gonna start with the big stuff, and then Brian's gonna move, and then I'm gonna use the next biggest things, and then we'll get to Brian's. So my raspberry jam is gonna go near the Harbison. The damson plum is gonna go over here near the Bailey and the lake's edge. Dilly mustard here to go near Alpha Tolman and the Cabot. And my dilly beans. So these are wet. If you want to use pickles or olives or things, which is a nice contrast. They cut through the saltiness and the wetness of the cheese. But if they're too wet, you want to put them in the bowl. In a bowl. I'm gonna make a little river or a little fan here. I'm gonna butt them up here against the side of the Harbison, which no one's gonna eat the bark part anyway. And up against the cheddar, which is strong enough to, or dry enough to counteract the wetness of that. But again, if they're really wet, you grab me one of your little ramekin thingies. You can put them in a little bowl. These are a little bit bigger than bite size, but they're like whole dilly beans, so they're fun. You know, if you have pickles or olives, they're probably going to be too wet for your board. So I'm just gonna turn those in that little corner there. And you work on yours and then I'll tell them what's mine.
Yeah, so Jeannette was just got done saying, I've actually got for my wet things cornichons. Because cornichons, and I don't have a thing like Harbison that has a nice bark, my cheddar cheese isn't as hard as hers is. I decided to opt mine out and leave them in a container like she was just discussing. and as much as I love cornichons, I don't need the juice leaking all over my cheeses. So I will end up removing this cheddar cheese block off. I was more doing that for a visual to show you where it's going to be on the board. And where Jeanette is going for a much nicer, cleaner appeal, I, coming from the backwoods of New England,
Doesn't look nice right a second.
and not afraid to just pile cheese nice and high.
All right, let's do it.
And I always like to leave a little bit of something rustic while everything else is looking nice and fresh. So I mentioned earlier that I do have a jam. That is the orange jam that pairs. I did put those in 2 smaller containers. So where Jeanette is leaving her jams in the glass jars they come with, which I highly encourage. I will be doing that with the mostarda on this one. I opted to move these jams into a smaller container, mostly because they're easier to pair with the other ones, while the mostarda is kind of strictly meant to be paired with that Harbinson, or with the Hosmer, I'm sorry. I will be removing my salumi as well. I wanted to do more of that. Let's show you guys that rind and the wrapper and everything. My cheese board has little grooves on the side, so I make use of those grooves, and I like to put my crackers, my meats and things like that in those to not necessarily interfere with all the other placements. When I'm generally making a cheese board, I'm always going to start with a mental template. So where Jeanette and I kind of drew pictures, it always starts with what you have in your head, what you have in your mind. I do have a general rule of thumb. While we have 2 larger cheese boards today, I do try to encourage that if you have a smaller one, you rely on a grid system, where if you have more space and you can rely on making a little more cool shapes and designs and doing a little more abstract pieces. If you're dealing with a much smaller piece, sticking with a very basic grid shape still gives that the full board appeal, but doesn't necessarily have to lose space on the board, lose space on the board for more cheeses in the product you want to put on. So Jeanette said it perfectly. I always start by adding structure, small vessels, the dips, the spreads, things like that. And then I usually segue into small things like fruits, nuts that you can just kind of place and throw. So I am going to move my extra soft boucheron, as you can probably see now. I'm going to do a very
hard thing to move.
It's a very hard thing to move. So I am going to do kind of like a half C, meet right in the middle, kind of a half moon thing. The reason being is it's going to give us a little bit of space in these grooves back here, so we're not interfering. It also gives us an opportunity to kind of shingle out this alpine that I have up top. And then Jeanette's doing all these nice, delicious looking fans over here.
Yeah. Sometimes these fall apart. I got this one too thin, but someone's going to get it. It's not that half a piece, quarter piece.
So some of the other cool really things that I haven't added to my board yet that I'm going to start is some of my personal favorites, your small fruits, your small things like that. And so today I've got some fresh figs, super in season right now, absolutely delicious, one of my favorites. I really struggled to not bring any chocolate on today, but I really thought about making them chocolate figs for you guys.
That's fun too. We also, if it grows together, it goes together. So
Exactly.
It's just like the similar pairings. I mean, we talked about my last show, the quince paste goes with manchego. I mean, figs are pretty versatile. We also have fig jam at our at the cheese counter, which is just always a nice thing with cheese.
I don't know, grilled cheese.
Yeah, Brian puts on his grilled cheese. So I also brought some dried apricots that I'm going to put up here above the Alpha Tolman, because they're really nice with a washed rind. It contrasts with the texture and the flavor of the cheese. You can use dried, Brian has the regular figs. You can use golden fig, the dried golden figs. Golden raisins are good with blue or a cheddar. So again, we're going to add a little more color here with this. You can, if you want to like meticulously place them, or you can just scatter them. So we got the dried apricots. You just go ahead whenever you want to add whatever it is.
So the next thing I'm going to grab are just really basic grapes, clean washed. Just grab a nice vine. You can see here I've got a nice long one, nice and clean, ready to go. All we're going to do is just do a slight trim on that main vine stalk, being careful not to pop any of those grapes.
Again, these are, one bite things, one bite apricots. Brian had to cut his figs a little bit. Just want to make sure that people can, chew them up at once. So we talked about going a little bit light on the meat. Also, the other thing about meat, just like we talked about crackers, you don't want too salty or too spicy. Like, it's not a good time to buy the spiciest chorizo, because you're going to drown out your taste buds for your cheese. So try to keep that in mind. And then I also added some I have some little, so here I'm trying to get in the color thing. Brian's got some more color going on. So I sliced up some radishes. Daikon radishes are nice. These are just regular, I don't know what they're called, regular spring radishes. You can use carrot curls. So the savory contrast is gonna go with, the harbison is really buttery. So radishes and butter are this really common combination. So I'm gonna put my radishes, a little spicy bite right here around my harbison. And that'll add a little color pop with a nice redness on the side. And you can also, again, if you can fill in every space if you want, or you can leave some little pockets in between. I still have some more things to throw on there. So I'm gonna a little more pockets. I also went with, you can also use roasted vegetables, hot or cold, roasted asparagus in the, what is this, spring? It's even though it's cold today, it's spring, right? For color, for contrast, for there's that crunch as opposed to the smoothness of the cheese. Do you have any more vegetables to put on there?
Vegetables and fruits,
Okay,
I don't think
so
so.
we're gonna go, so my other fruit thing is that, I sliced up some pear thinly. I used a red pear. So a pear is not going to oxidize quite as fast as apple. But the red pear has a nice red rind on the back to show up when you're bored. I'm going to tuck that in here near the Bailey. Here's some radishes. So I guess I have a little extra space on this board that I might need all of it, but just tuck them in here a little more. All right, and then what else do you have to put on there? Fun stuff.
So for fun stuff, one of the last things I have to do are pistachios. So I got a lot of fun stuff still. So I opted out for pistachios, because they are a little more of a springtime nut. They're a little more common to find in springtime, wintertime. However, you can use Marcona almonds, glazed pecans, which I actually think you have over there, if I'm seeing correctly. So any of your kind of favorite nuts. Jeanette said it already. I do encourage to not go something spicy, chipotle roasted, things like that, or maybe a little frowned upon. And same with those very heavily sweet roasted nuts. If you find those like cinnamon roasted cashews and things like that, I maybe wouldn't suggest using those. However, I like pistachios for the same reason you can see here. I've got a lot of greens going on to kind of vibrate that spring color, those nice red figs in the center. I am just going to take these pistachios and straw them about right next to everything, almost like a little river of pistachios.
And the fruit can also be bigger than one bite because it's nice and refreshing. If you have slices of whatever. Berries are nice to pair with all these soft ripened things.
Yeah, some of my personal favorites are like pears, figs, strawberries, grapes. Jeanette mentioned some radishes. I actually will use cucumbers for a palate cleanser sometimes. I'll occasionally do peeled ginger as a palate cleanser sometimes. Cherry tomatoes are another way to really add a vibrancy of color to them. One or two red on top, does that make an absolute red pop?
So Brian has the pistachios. I have caramelized pecans that we sell at the cheese counter. Marcona almonds are great. Sometimes they're a little bit salty depending on what you got. So these, again, little crunchy sweet nuggets down here on the edge of the harbison. If you want to arrange them all nicely, you can do that. I'm just gonna put a little row down here. And other roasted nuts or seeds, sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds. If it's the right season, you can find pomegranate seeds. They're beautiful red little jewels that you can tuck into your board. The sweet also goes really nicely with the blue, the Bailey Hughes, and again, chocolate and dark chocolate and blue is fun. But we got all these other nice sweets. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so mentioning all the sweet stuff, the reason I personally like to go so heavy on the sweet things is because between the salumis and the cheeses, there's so much richness, there's so much saltiness in it, that having these nice fresh vibrancy of flavors helps cut some of that richness. And you don't feel quite as full after eating a couple bites. You can actually continue eating the cheese board in between.
And then I'm going to tuck my little crackers here. I guess I have a little too much space here. I'm going to tuck my little crackers in some of these empty pockets. I'm gonna make them, no, I have space, it's just my borders. I don't wanna put more cheese on there, more cheese, man.
More cheese.
So I'm gonna stand my little crackers up here, make some little like cracker things jumped in here.
On the same boat with the crackers, I'm just adding a very, very simple row, following those grooves of my
Brian has
board.
these fun little channels here to put his crackers in, I'm jealous. And other things, if you don't wanna use crackers, you can use fresh bread, you can use potato or veggie chips are also options. You can even try popcorn as a fun, different thing to put on your board. Pop those in there, and again, so the platter should look the way you want it to look. You can leave some space empty, you can fill it up. When you're finished decorating your platter, oh, I forgot, I sliced my harvest. You should take a picture and send it to us, because we want to post them in our little cheese counter area. We're
Yes,
gonna take some
please.
pictures here. And it doesn't have to be one you made today, but if you make a beautiful cheese platter, please send us a picture or bring it in so we can put it up on our cheese wall, right? A cheese case.
Yeah.
I guess I should pick out the ones that aren't broken. And then the last thing that I have to do is, so the Harbison's been sitting here waiting for us. So it has a spruce bark rind. I'm gonna very thinly slice the top off here. And then I'm just gonna, this is more of a suggested, stick your sharp knife in the edge, run it around the edge. And then I'm gonna just peel the lid back, you know, where like your little can opener kind of thing.
And I will say something fun that I've done with the Harbinson before, and I think they've advertised is I'll occasionally take this and you can put it on a grill
Yes, you
in a
can
cast
grill
iron
it.
pan,
So
and it is so
got
good.
this nice ooey gooey buttery thing going on inside. The spruce bark adds a little bit of flavor and texture. Make sure you push that nice gooey stuff back in the top there. And then I guess we should talk about utensils. So obviously you can't eat this unless somebody's gonna pick the whole thing around and off with it, which is bad. Not fair, not fair.
They have
So
to share.
provide guests with their appropriate serving utensils. It's firm, they can pick it up with their hands, they can pick up little curd cheddar nuggets, spoons for your jams, your honeys, or a little thing to serve. So the Harbison and the, so this is where you'd like, need a cracker, get a little Harbison, you need to have, something in the Harbison, a soft thing or a spoon to put it on your cracker with a little jam. But that way a utensil for each thing, so they're not cross-contaminated. Not so much contamination, it's just transferring of flavors. Although maybe a small knife for the lake's edge, maybe a little fork for the dilly beans, or little tongs if you have those. What else do you got over there to use?
So for utensils, Jen just said it, I definitely like to use
Yeah,
jams.
for the jams.
Yep. So because these are the same jams, I'll use the same one. Haven't opened that raspberry mostarda yet, but when we pop that open, and I will say this raspberry mostarda is a nice contrast to all that sweetness. It does have a little bit of a peppery bite to it, which is going to be a really nice contrast as well. So when you did your Harbinson, I have one cheese left for me, and that's gonna be the one I was talking about all day. I have a midi blue. The reason I waited for this is because it is extra soft
All
anyway.
right,
So
while he's doing his midi, you can move that.
Okay.
We can, these little other things come in cheese knife collection that you can use for the blue cheese to pick that up. So that wouldn't be messy. Maybe a spoon for the pecans or the caramelized nuts if you want to just choose to let people use their hands.
So the midi blue real quick. Can't eat the rind. I typically shut it, or not a rind. You don't eat that. I do cut it off. I'm gonna just crumble this very simply. So very soft cheese, very malleable. It's gonna want to crumble. It's gonna want to break.
And while he's finishing that up, if you are not ready to serve your platter at this point, do you want to loosely cover it with plastic wrap and leave it outside the fridge so the cheeses don't dry out, or you want to serve it right away? But you don't want the cheese, the plastic to touch the cheese.
I'll occasionally do toothpicks to
Yeah,
help prevent.
toothpicks under your plastic. You can also put toothpicks out here for, in these little containers that Brian has to, if you want to put toothpicks on your thing for people to use various toothpicks, you can do that as well.
Got it. So I'm just going to crumble up this midi blue very simply. It's a little extra wet. I think we're actually done with these cutting boards.
Yeah,
So I might even just move this to the side.
Feel free to ask us any questions if you have, what else do I say? If you, just to store your cheeses, like, if you're done, if your guests don't eat it all or you didn't use it all, it's good to put it back in like the cheese paper it came in, or the salami, or wrap it in like a piece of wax paper, or I also have cheese bags at the counter, and that's to bring a box over here. Oh, here comes a honeycomb. Like, I am ready to eat. I hope you guys are ready to eat, because I've been talking about food for like an hour and I'm like salivating here.
So I think you guys just saw me take this big old hunk of honeycomb and just put it on the plate. And so part of the reason I love honeycomb is it's definitely not a common thing. It's a nice little side treat. There isn't a kind of an appropriate way to eat honeycomb in an unappropriate way. I like to think that there is no inappropriate way.
Whatever works for you is the way.
The main thing I wanted to say, just keeping in mind that it can be eaten. The waxy centers can be eaten. In fact, they do like to be eaten by many people because it gives a texture difference. So obviously we've all eaten honey. It's very sweet, it's very syrupy, very sticky. The waxy honeycomb gives it almost a crunch. And when eating all these very soft cheeses, things like that, sometimes having a texture change can make or break a cheese plate. And so I'd always go a little lighter on the honeycomb. A little bit goes a long way. If you decide to eat it and not want to eat that waxy comb-like centers, you can just simply spit them out. And I would maybe into a napkin so your party guests don't get a little too weirded out. But
sorry, or just have one of those little bowls or something to put your wax in. But yeah, so these are cheese boards. If you have questions, we would love to hear them. We would also really, really, really love to see your pictures. And anything else? Is there any questions that anybody wants to share? We're happy to.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat, suggestions for wine pairings with specific cheese types. I know that's a loaded question since we're.
So I'm not an expert. I'm a very novice at that. You definitely want to go with lighter, tend to be white, because it's the reds tend to be dark and the tannic acids will overpower a lot of the cheese unless it's a really firm, strong cheese like the cloth bound or a very strong blue. But definitely a lighter, more floral, like white thing is the best combination, or like a sparkling wine is also nice with cheese platters. I am definitely a novice at it, but there's a lot of stuff on the internet which would be more recommended than I have more suggestions. So that's about as far as it's about as far as I can go with it.
Well, so I've got some back history with like wine pairings and stuff like that. I did do wine tastings for quite some time. So you nailed it. As far as I know, what my knowledge allows me, because obviously I don't know everything. I have always been told white wines are always encouraged. The reason being a red wine's just a little too bold, a little too poignant. They're going to mask the flavors rather than complement. Honestly, when it comes to wine pairings, a really, really good, I guess, resource I use is, believe it or not, the Jasper Hills Farms, things like that. If you go on their website, they actually have pairings. They actually have local wine companies.
They also have them on the back
of their jars.
Products. Like on the back of the Harbison, it says, in the on the back of the Harbison, it says that it goes with barrel-aged wine and beer, a baguette and raspberries. It says it on the back of the little Hosmer. The little
Hosmer pairs with actually crop lager, prosciutto, so things of a little bit of a sweeter nature. And so a lot of the time, if you feel like you're not sure what to pair with it, use the resources. Internet's there. Honestly, that's some of the best way to get everyone's opinions and flavor profiles from kind of everybody who's tried it.
But I do know, sparkling wine and like the champagne type things do go really well with cheese. So I think
Prosecco's another one. Yeah, Prosecco's another really great one.
It's also, to just cut in between their tastings and their palate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's as far as we can go without.
Yeah, it's basically wine has always been meant to be a little bit of a palate cleanser in between. So the lighter the better, a little more effervescent if possible. But other than that, I've always been told the dealer's choice. Like, if you want a
Right.
wine with your cheese,
Right.
enjoy it. It's your cheese board. Enjoy your wine and your cheese.
Is there any other questions from anyone still on here? Feel free to take yourself off and ask that question.
Because then you should definitely eat the cheese. And if you didn't make a platter, you should definitely be hungry right now. But thank you so much for all joining us.
Yes, thank you guys.
We had fun putting these together and we're going to share these with staff.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
joining
Thank
us.
you all.